Good morning, my lovelies, and welcome to day 2 of our sew along. Today is probably the most difficult part of the sew along. We'll be stitching that super cool front, color block front, and I'll include the pocket so you can see how that's created. If you choose to skip the pocket, you can definitely do that and just sew the side seams and the top seam, and you're done for the day. But I find that pocket to be cute and we can learn a new technique, so let's go ahead and do that. So for the first part of today's steps, we need the 3 front pockets. The patterns calls for interfacing a little bit of knit interfacing, which is also known as tricot interfacing, that allows for the fabric to stretch after you've interfaced it. I wouldn't use woven interfacing like SF101 for this. However, I did not have tricot. I thought I did, but then I couldn't find it in my sewing room and I didn't want to go purchase any new ones. So instead of using that, I used the featherweight knit interfacing, just ultra featherweight, so very thin, so it has a slight bit of stretch, and it's not thick. So I went ahead and interfaced between the 2 pocket markings on both sides of the main panel, and then I did the same thing on one of the lining pieces, and this is the lining that is a mirror image to the front. So I will place right now the lining piece right sides together with the main piece, like so. So you'll have 2 lining pieces, 1, 2 that are cut mirror image from yesterday, and then 1 main piece. So I'm placing it right sides together like so, right side, and I'm going to stitch in between my markings. These are my notches for my pockets. So in between those 2 with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, so 3/8 of an inch seam allowance with a lightning bolt stitch so it has stretch to it. And I'm going to stitch just this part in between the 2 markings. I put notches for my markings, but if you want to put just lines, you can do that. And if you use, let's say, a friction pen, that will disappear when you iron it. So this is one side, and then I'll repeat the same thing for the other side, again only in between the pockets with that lightning bolt stitch. Perfect. What you want to do right now is turn your piece inside out. So now you have your pocket right here stitched, but then this part is loose. I did forget to do my snips, so let's go ahead and turn it back with the wrong side up so we can do some snips. Alright, so where you have your pocket markings, you want to do a snip perpendicular to the side seam that is 1/4 of an inch. Since your seam allowance is 3/8 of an inch, you want to go ahead and do 1/4 of an inch, and you want to make sure you don't snip your stitches. I'll show you a close-up of how I did this. See? Now again with the stitch, it really likes that stitch. Okay. That's that's how you have all the snips on all the sides. Come on. And there you go. So there's the snips on all sides. So now you turn it with the right side up. So you want to bring this out, and I'm going to pin them in place just so you can see how they look like. And having those snips there definitely helps when you turn this. You can give it a good press. You can top stitch right now the pocket part, and I think I'm going to do that. Just need to change my thread. I'm putting pins so you can see easily, because it's cotton like right does like to roll. So if I put some pins you can see it easier. And it will also help when we stitch the front together. This pattern follows a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance in most parts, except for the pocket part where it has 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and that's just to allow for you to snip the pocket afterwards. Okay, so this is how it looks like from the front. So see, this part here is sewn, and you see where we did the snips, there is like a U, little U here. Alright, so now let's top stitch only between these 2 points where the pocket is. And I'm going to top stitch with the same lightning bolt stitch. No need to change that. Maybe I'll increase the length a little bit. And I do believe these steps are the only steps that require a sewing machine. The pattern can be sewn entirely on a sewing machine, but I'm personally a fan of my serger and my cover stitch, so I tend to use those instead. But this part must be done on a sewing machine. Okay, so the pockets are top stitch now. Let me give you a close up. So this is how it looks like top stitched on both sides. Alright, so that aside, grab your remainder lining piece, and this one will be with the right side up. So lay it with the right side up and bring your side pieces, in my case it's the waffle, and place those again with the right side up. So let's start working on the wearer's left. In my case it's the right side, but it's going to be on the wearer's left when you put it on. So you want to match the pocket pieces the same way we did before, but this time you're doing it with the remainder center lining, right sides together with your side pieces. So you want to do that, just double checking that it's the same. Yes, 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. You want to do the same thing. And now I have my black thread, so it's going to be easier for me to see. So I've only sewn this part. See? You can see on the black thread. Now we'll do the same thing on the other side. And we'll bring the shorter one, right sides together. The side will match, but you will only be sewing in between those notches. Those pocket notches. Same as we did on the other side. Any waviness that you might find from sewing, it will disappear once you've pressed your garment. Like see here, there's a little bit of waviness. If we go ahead and give it a good steam press, it will disappear. So now you want to place the, oh, let's not forget the snips again. Do your little snips with 1/4 of an inch. So now we'll make a big sandwich that we can sew with a serger. And I'll show you how we do it. Okay. So lay your sides like so. Then bring in your front piece like so. So now we have to attach them all. So right now I have everything right side up, as you can see. What we just sewn, this is all right side up. Now I'm putting my front piece that we've sewn it previously also right side up. So now your two linings are also right sides together. I'm matching the parts where we have the pockets right here. See, this is stitched and this is top stitch. So I'm matching those two, and then I'm bringing this side on top like so. So now on this side here where I have the notch and the snips, I will have 4 layers. And I will pin those right sides together. So now the 4 layers look like this. Pinned together. It looks much more complicated than it is. So I hope these videos will definitely help you. So let's do the same thing for the top. It was like this. So this is the part that we've sewn together. This is stitched right here. Place your part, the accent on the front, and match it like right here, and then bring this piece on top like so, and now everything will match on the side seam. I'm pinning it in place. There's a few notches from the pattern that you will have to have aligned, but they will align if you've cut the fabric correctly and you've sewn everything correctly. And here you will only have, where the pocket is, you will only have two pieces sewn together, because this part here is detached where the pocket is. Okay, let's do the same thing for the other side. I'll show you all the steps, these steps 4 times, because I find that that's the most, the part you need the most help visually, at least in my opinion. So again, now I'm working on the other side. I have the accent with the lining, and this is stitched right here in between. And then I lay on top my right side fabric, and then I bring this right here. And let's start with the top. And I'm matching all the raw edges and all the notches right here. And then we will move to the serger. I believe this is the only part that you must use your sewing machine for. Okay, and now let's do it one last time. I'll open it back up. I have the bottom corner here. So this part stitched at the pocket with the right side up, lay this on top, and then bring the side towards the inside, and we'll pin around this edge. And again, here you should have 4 layers right now. Okay, and where the pocket is, you only have 2 layers that are already stitched together, but we'll also run a serger stitch on top. So right now, we'll take this to the serger now, and we will serge from top to bottom, all the way, with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And this is the bottom part of our front. And here, we have the pocket created already. So let's move on to the serger and do this step and then add the top part. And that's the last thing we need to do today. We are at the serger right now. So like I said, we're going to run a serger stitch from top to bottom on both sides and stitch all layers together. And this is a 1/4 inch. Where you get to the pocket part, you only have 2 layers. Again, any waviness will disappear once we press it. Let's go ahead and repeat the same step on the other side. Gorgeous. Give it a good press and let's top stitch. I'm turning to my cover stitch machine because that's my preferred method of top stitching, and I'm going to top stitch the seam allowance towards the side panel. Here I already have 4 layers. I don't want to top stitch it like this. I want to top stitch it towards the side panel because this is only 1 layer of fabric. And for top stitching I'm using this beautiful, gorgeous unicorn main serger's thread from Wizardry Stitchery and Craft. This is a Tex 30, perfect for sergers and cover stitch machines. And I mean regular sewing as well. Oh my goodness, so cute. Again, keep the seam allowance. I'm feeling it with my fingers here. Keep the seam allowance towards the side panel. There you have it. I will give it a good press. Oh, it's so pretty. Let's do the same thing on the other side. One last step for today would be to add the top of the collar blocking part. You've definitely achieved the hardest part of the pattern, if you ask me. This was the hardest part, creating that pocket in the front. Okay, so now take your so it's easier to see. This is your front piece. To the top, take your front piece that you have left and place it right sides together at the top. I'll put a few pins in place. And then we will stitch this down again with, it looks like this, with 1/4 inch seam allowance. And top stitch them. And that's your front piece. Tomorrow I believe we are adding the shoulder seams, and we'll also add the sleeves. It's easy peasy from now on. Easy peasy. This has a slight curve to it, so make sure that you keep that little curve there. Just a slight. Okay, the raw edges are aligned. I'm going to stitch this down with 1/4 inch seam allowance. Gorgeous. I'll do the same thing. I'm going to take this to the cover stitch and top stitch the seam allowance up. Again, if you do it up, it will reduce any bulk since you have that center panel with all the layers. Thread was meant for this fabric. Oh my goodness, it's so pretty, that rainbow thread. Let me show you a close-up, and then I will go and look at this thread. Look how pretty. Alright, so this is my front panel. I will go ahead and give it a good press to reduce this waviness here. You can see from top stitching and from stitching, there's a slight waviness. That will disappear once you've pressed it. Give it a good press, snap a picture of your front of the hood as you created it with or without the pockets, and place it in the day 2 photo comments in the Sew Along album. You find the Sew Along album in the Backstitch backroom on Facebook, and I will see you back here tomorrow for day 3. Talk to you soon. Bye.